The moonlight shining through half-drawn drapes was mirrored on the cool marble floor of the papal apartment. Pope Leo XIV stood by himself, with his hands resting on the old desk and his gaze focused on a confidential document that would never be made public. "The indicators are obvious," he muttered. "The faith is bleeding." Himself, his grizzled fingers tracing pictures of deserted pews throughout the former fortresses of the church, he was confronted by statistics, demonstrating widespread apostasy in both Europe and the Americas. Now the first American pope had to deal with a reality that no predecessor had publicly recognized, a disappearing religion in the contemporary world. He would question everything tomorrow. Please click the like button and subscribe to the content before reading on channel, and mention your viewing location. Your assistance is crucial. The Vatican's hallways never actually slept. However, at 3:17 a.m. August 18, 2025, they brought an uncle. Leo XIV walked down the dark hallways in silence. His against the darkness, the white cassock, was nearly glowing. No help, no Swiss guards, no witnesses, just 8 billion souls in the body of a 70-year-old guy. The world now knows Robert Francis Prevost as Pope Leo XIV had only been in office for 3 months. The American surprise at the conclave had been elected after Francis's death in April, and traditionalists had been observing him with a weary eye from the start. The Latin Yankee's notoriety in Peru preceded him, and he lived among the poorest, people refusing security details to go around freely with prostitutes and drug addicts. A man of memorable deeds but seldom words, Jan Cardinal Franco de' Medici was waiting in the subterranean archive room, which was filled with old manuscripts, and only slightly lit by a desk lamp. At Medici, a towering figure in Vatican politics for 40 years, was a smart, politically connected member of the old guard, and ferociously defending the customs of the church. "Your Holiness," de' Medici signaled that you had asked for these documents. 2. A pile of files. The full internal survey of seminary enrollment, confession attendance, and disaffiliation rates. Naturally, all enrollments are kept completely private. Leo nodded and took the file silently. "Father in heaven, if I may," de' Medici went on, "it is important to interpret these figures carefully. The approach may have flaws. The truth is undoubtedly less worrisome." The Pope looked over the documents without saying anything. His face stiffened deliberately with every page. "Our forebears had to deal with comparable difficulties," de' Medici said. "The church has endured a lot of hardships. Maybe a commission to research this." Leo finally said, "No more commissions," in a gentle yet acerbic tone. "No more research, no more meticulous interpretations." De' Medici moved apprehensively. "Father in heaven, with respect, these things need to be handled delicately. The faithful require comfort, not fear. Maybe a declaration restating your customs." Leo put a sealed envelope on the table and interrupted. "I've written a statement, de' Medici, targeted for the general audience of tomorrow." However, Leo's hand did not move. "You haven't," de' Medici added, with a hint of anxiety in his voice, "consulted the Secretariat of State." "According to protocol, any significanti am not consulting anyone," Leo remarked, staring into the cardinal's eyes as he reviewed the statement. "Note in this, the room's temperature appeared to drop by a few degrees. No pope had made major changes in decades. Words made in public without the meticulous planning of Vatican agencies, the diplomatic review, the political computations. What precisely are you going to announce?" With a tight voice, de' Medici asked. At last, Leo took his hand away from the envelope. "The reality." De' Medici opened the document attentively, his face pallid as he read. His eyes grew wide, and he glanced up in dread. "This is not feasible. This cannot be said in public." "Just the diplomatic ramifications. The purpose of this church is not to uphold," Leo said, "diplomatic relations," his Chicago accent growing louder as it often did when he was determined. "Its purpose is to spread the truth. However, Holy Father, in order to identify particular administrations, to accuse our own bishops of prioritizing and concealing systematic abuses, property over fairness, of being aimless." Leo straightened his posture. "Each and every those files provide word documentation." The hands of the Medici shook a little. "You will cause a rift. The conventional donors will stop providing support. Without funds, the church could not operate." Leo completed. "Maybe that's just what we need. I implore you, Your Holiness, to think again. Let's soften at least the wording to progressively phase this strategy." Leo studied the ancient crucifix that was affixed to the wall, silently before answering. "Did Jesus phase out the clearing of the temple?" The cardinal was unable to respond. Leo went on. "We've turned into merchants, offering comfort rather than conversion. I won't keep up the pretense. The conservatives will demand that you be fired. They'll say you've deserted Catholic customs." Leo's face broke into a little, melancholy smile. "The worship of ashes is not tradition, rather it is fire preservation, and our fire is almost extinguished." He turned to go, but de' Medici made a last effort. "Holy Father, the church has protocols. No pope takes action by himself." Leo stopped at the entrance. "Discardinal processes do not purify the church. Get ready. Everything is different tomorrow." As the door, de' Medici instantly grabbed his phone and closed behind the Pope. Emergency meetings were held in a matter of minutes, being set up all throughout Rome. The old guard was getting organized. Leo, meantime, went back to his modest apartment, praying while kneeling in front of a plain wooden cross, not the papal crucifix with jewels, but the one he had carried for decades in the slums of Peru. He stayed there for hours, his lips as still as stone, moving in quiet dialogue with the God he had vowed to serve honestly at all costs. Donna's Vatican communication staff arrived. They found that their well-planned agenda had been taken over. The removal of all cameras from the audience hall had been ordered by the Pope. No edits, no live-stream video, just the Pope and the people using whatever filming equipment they had brought. The apostasy, the majority, he suspected, weren't empty churches. It was a phony religion clad in gold garments, accumulating wealth while preaching poverty. And less than 6 hours later, he would give it its true name. The Vatican's recently appointed Sophia Chen received an unmarked envelope on her desk, designated as the Director of Digital Communications. It contained a handwritten note in the unique script of the Pope. Regardless of our channels, the message of today will be shared. There is no need to exaggerate the truth. Leo XIV and her 3B for entering the Vatican. Chen worked as a journalist for decades, and he had never been so nervous about a papal speech. Whatever was approaching, the world would change forever. The audience hall was packed by lunchtime. Packed to overflowing. After receiving confusing information, diplomatic representatives shuffled uneasily in the front row. Panicked Vatican officials' warnings. Reporters frequently inspected their recording devices, detecting the peculiar ambience. Paolo Rossi, the Cardinal Secretary of State, made a final appeal to the Pope behind closed doors. In a tiny side room, getting ready, Holy Father Rossi remarked, "I just read the text of your address. Tense. This has never happened before. You are openly opposing the governments of Saudi Arabia, China, and Russia. Nations where our followers are already persecuted." Leo repositioned his plain cross, disregarding the elaborate one that had been presented to him. "And even worse," Rossi added, "you're linking these to our own hierarchy. Failures. College of Cardinals will rebel." "Let them," Leo said coolly. "Our hierarchy has been implicated not by my words but by their own actions." Just the financial repercussions were a component of Leo concluded the computation. The church endured for the first 3 centuries without assistance from the government or billion-dollar accounts. Rossi attempted a different strategy. "Your purity. Your forebears were aware of the sensitive aquilium as necessary. My forebears took the appropriate actions." Leo broke off, his tone forceful but not cruel. "I have to follow suit." At the entryway, a Vatican aide showed that it was time. Leo got up and touched the cardinal's agitated shoulder. "Paolo, I wasn't chosen to oversee the decline of the church with honor. Since I was chosen to share the truth, now that the truth is painful." Rossi made a last-ditch effort as the Pope approached the audience hall entrance. "Appeal. Let us at least give the diplomatic community with perspective by issuing clarifications later." Leo paused, looking at the cardinal with a surprising tenderness. "The church maintains its credibility because we don't mean what we say. We talk too brutally. We mean every word today." The customary cheer. Pope Leo XIV's entrance into the hall caused a commotion, but astute observers noticed his peculiar clothing, a basic white cassock without the traditional garb. No embroidered stole, no red shoes, just the parish priest's regular attire with a papal skull hat added. He skipped the introduction and went straight to the microphone. Customary greetings and procession. Sensing the seriousness in his manner, the audience fell silent. Brothers as well. Ashi's voice was clear and strong as he said, "Sisters, I stand before you not in triumph, but in sadness, not to honor our church, but to face its shortcomings." The interpreters in their booths looked at each other in concern. This wasn't the text that was given to them. "Too long, we've evaluated success based on our structures, our impact, and our diplomatic ties. We are now a self-preservation-focused organization. Instead than a declaration." Stone-faced, the diplomatic corps sat, reporters with their fingers poised over keyboards. They leaned forward. "I will specifically name our failures today. Whatever the repercussions, I will point out instances in which we have compromised our objective in our interactions with the strong in this planet." Sitting close by, Cardinal de' Medici closed his eyes in surrender. No stopping would be possible. What was about to happen? Initially to the regimes that target believers, while we remain diplomatically silent to safeguard our interests. "You can no longer have cordial connections with His Holy See." He started enumerating nations and certain regulations describing religious persecution that had been purposefully minimized for years by Vatican diplomacy. He gave dates, case numbers, and the names of the missing and incarcerated for each example. The level of specificity waste dribble. This was a well-documented indictment rather than a rhetorical flourish. He also addressed our own hierarchy. He went on, lowering his voice a little. "We've failed. I have gone through all of the abuse case files from all across the world. Perpetrators' protection is not a coincidental pattern. The problem is systemic." The hall reverberated with gasps. Popes have never discussed the institutional nature of the cover-up so bluntly. "Starting tomorrow, each complete records of all abuse complaints. The names of the accused, and any actions taken or not, will be published by CESE. Captured by religious officials. Bishops who don't follow the rules will be dismissed right away. A number of cardinals distinctly pale. Within minutes, decades of meticulously controlled damage control were being demolished. Additionally, I am forming an impartial panel of lay specialists, not members of the Vatican or clergy, with complete authority to examine all facets of church administration, including the papacy. Their results will be released to the public. After pausing and staring straight into the sea of astonished faces, the Pope said we'll make up his pontificate. There is no need for defenders for this church. It must be converted. We're going to stop hiding. Corruption underlying our sacred purpose appealing. The very fact that our task requires perfect truth makes it holy. Assas, he went on. Specifics of Vatican bank dealings with autocratic governments came to light. Specifically mentioned were diplomatic deals that compromised religious freedom in exchange for institutional access. Inside, with devastating accuracy, messages demonstrating the measured reaction to scandals were cited. When Pope not from the hierarchy, Leo XIV concluded, the audience hall had changed from startled stillness to noisy tears who sat in stunned incredulity, but from regular attendees who had never heard such unadulterated truth from Peter's chair. According to the Pope, the main source of apostasy that we encounter is not the faithful abandoning their seats. Closing. It is a betrayal of the extreme demands of the gospel by ourselves. Today is the last day of that apostasy. Whatever it expenses, wherever it takes you. Without the traditional benediction, he walked out of the hall, but nothing there was applause. Just a thick hush that would shortly be broken by the most deafening religious earthquake in contemporary. Emergency meetings were called at chanceries around the world in a matter of hours. Registered stock markets immediate declines as investments connected to the Vatican were re-evaluated. Additionally, Leo XV knelt in the papal residence, bracing himself for the tempest he had purposefully let loose. We'll see now, he muttered, who is God's servant, and who is the sole servant of God. Following Pope Leo XIV's dramatic speech, the Vatican press the office fell into disarray. Hundreds of reporters pressed for clarifications in areas meant for dozens that nobody has the right to provide. Bypassing the entire communications system, the Pope had essentially left his words to remain unmodified and unfiltered. At the same time, at a private conference room located deep within the Dan, emergency meeting of cardinal advisors had been hurriedly called at the Apostolic Palace. There was tension in the air, faces that are gloomy with barely controlled terror and rage. Typically, Cardinal Dometius thwacks the length of the antique table in a picture of aristocratic poise. This is reckless and unheard of. All of the diplomatic ties we have painstakingly built over the ages. Hong Kong's Cardinal Zhang Zedli shook his head. Our delegates have already been called by the Chinese authorities. They're threatening to cancel the temporary agreement on the appointment of bishops. Saudi Arabia has officially objected to his portrayal. Cardinal Rossi stated that they were subject to religious limitations, and the Americans are requesting that his critique be clarified of their border regulations. The oldest of them, Cardinal Esposito, Liana ahead. Even worse might be the financial ramifications. 3 significant contributors have their commitments to the Vatican Foundation have already been halted. The door has opened, the markets are reacting, and everything expectant eyes turned. Nevertheless, Archbishop Williams, either Pope's personal secretary, a quiet Englishman, came in by himself. His Holiness won't be attending you, Williams said softly. Domiti's expression hardened. This meeting was summoned by the College of Cardinals Dean. It is mandatory. The crisis must be addressed by the Holy Father has produced. Williams did not respond. I was invited to give this message by the Holy Father. I've said obviously there are only things to do, nothing to explain. I'm praying right now and will continue to be so till the wider public tomorrow. The hand of Cardinal Rossi banged against the table. This is refusal to take responsibility. The diplomatic community as a whole is calling for explanations. Is he aware of what is he finished? I think he knows exactly what he has done. Williams gave a level response. Additionally, he told me to notify you that Pope signed a motu proprio this morning that transfers all Vatican property instantly. Financial assets under layovers to a new transparent structure. Protests broke out in the room. Cardinals emerged from their seats, multilingual indignation overlapping their voices. He can't act alone on this. This is against canonical protocols. The Holy See is going to go bankrupt. After waiting for the initial shock to pass, Williams going on. Furthermore, 3 curial cardinals named in the abuse have resigned, and His Holiness has accepted their resignations. Paperwork, and has designated a temporary commission to oversee their divisions. Which cardinals? They amended, but it appeared by the abrupt pallor of multiple faces that they were already aware. The formal declaration will be made at noon, said Williams. Additionally, His Holiness has instructed me to let you know that any cardinal who wants to are free to openly express formal disagreement to these actions and ought to be ready to defend their position with complete documentary evidence before the impartial commission. When Williams left, a very different situation was taking place at St. Martha's residence. the Vatican guest residence, leaving the cardinals in startled silence, where Pope Leo had opted to reside instead of the customary papal lodgings. In a straightforward encounter there, the Pope sat in the room with survivors of clergy abuse, a group that would have been unthinkable during earlier pontificates, mistreatment from 6 continents, invited directly by the Pope, and transported. In Rome, Leo promised them, "Your testimony will not be filtered." Strong but kind tone of voice. Without using ecclesiastical middlemen, the Commission will hear your case directly. Your reforms will be shaped by experience rather than the other way around. An Australian middle-aged woman who has battled for justice for 2 decades, examining the Pope's face with suspicion. "Holy Father, we've heard promises before. Lovely words that went nowhere." Leo nodded, admitting that what she had said was true. "There is no reason for you to trust. Judge by deeds, not words." With a complete subpoena, the Commission starts its work today. Authority over Vatican records, not even PayPal communications or the money is sealed from them. HLN man, controlled. Rage tight in his voice. Millions of dollars were spent on attorneys to represent victims in court. "Lawful today is the last day of opposition to victims," Leo stated forcefully. He handed a document over the table and said, "And as for reparations, this oversees the sale of Vatican assets that are not necessary, starting with the investment portfolio and properties that don't specifically meet pastoral needs." The Cardinals College is creating a Williams reported a formal declaration of concern. "They're implying that your health might be at risk, that the strain of your judgment has been impacted by the office." Unsurprised, Leo nodded. "The playbook is foreseeable. When you are unable to dispute the message, question the messenger. An extreme synod is being discussed to deal with the crisis," Williams added. "Calls are coming in from Cardinal Demeti." Leo calmly said, "Let's meet. The truth doesn't mind being examined." Williams paused. Prior to providing the following update. "Credible threats against your life are reported by security services, Your Holiness, from both internal factors agitated by the financial situation and external forces listed in your address revelations." The Pope did not respond to this information. "Has the public been given access to the first batch of abuse files, archives?" "Yes, Holy Father. At 6 o'clock in the evening, the online database went live. As you instructed, the servers were first crashed by the traffic. More than 2 million downloads have already been reported." Leo shut up his eyes for a moment and the victim's account. "This afternoon, the first session was live-streamed. Audience size was unheard of." A small smile appeared on the face for the first time that day. Pope's expression, "The truth speaks for itself." After being freed, Williams was about to depart when he posed the query. Many people were curious. "Are you ready, Holy Father, for the potential that these acts could result in formal resistance, even an effort to get rid of you?" Leo Daft turned to face the straightforward. He had a wooden cross on his wall that has been with him for decades while serving in the poorest areas of Peru. Localities in a low voice. He remarked, "The Church has survived corrupt popes. A truthful one will survive," Don said. On August 19th, over the Vatican, creating lengthy shadows over St. Peter's Square, where an extraordinary number of people had overnight. They gathered, as word of the Pope's revolutionary deeds went around the world, both ardent admirers and furious adversaries. As the diversified audience grew, security personnel found it difficult to keep the peace. Traditionalists holding banners calling for protocol to be followed. Abuse survivors carrying pictures of victims who have passed away. Just regular Catholics attempting to observe history. The administrative apparatus of the Apostolic Palace, the Vatican, had come to a complete standstill. Curial authorities were hesitant to process documents, not sure which protocols were still in use. Employees in certain departments just waited while viewing news feeds for hints regarding potential future events. Over the course of the night, Cardinal Demeti made his way to cardinal after cardinal, fostering agreement for an unprecedented intervention across time zones. In the morning, he had obtained provisional backing from a sizable portion, especially those who have the most stake in the Church's financial and diplomatic strength. "The college needs to take decisive action," he demanded at a hurriedly scheduled breakfast meeting with impotent allies. "This is about responsible governance, not against reform." "There has never been a pope in modern history," Cardinal Fuentes of Madrid nodded in accord, saying, "has taken such drastic measures without appropriate consultation. Just the canonical ramifications are astounding. Overnight he is demolishing centuries of church tradition." "I've had conversations with a number of canonists," Cardinal Thibault continued. "There can be justification for requesting a declaration of incompetence if he keeps acting in such a reckless manner." Demeti bent forward. "At today's meeting we need to show unity. The divinity is necessary to convey to Father that even the Petrine office has its limitations." Meanwhile, Pope Leo XIV was meeting with a completely different group in another area of the Vatican. The recently designated lay commissioners to supervise the Transparency Project. These weren't your typical Vatican insiders but experts with training in human rights legislation, forensic accounting, and every level of opposition will be encountered. The Pope gave them frank warnings. This system is intended to defend itself. South African jurist Dr. Alina Mageki, who had previously prosecuted offenses during the apartheid era, closely examined him, respectfully. Father in heaven, we must understand what occurs when influential interests resist. Will you remain resolute during the bishops' conferences start to rebel? The inquiry lingered, fair but incisive. Throughout church reform history, there were several audacious beginnings that withered beneath the weight of institutions. Dr. Fabke, the Pope, retorted, looking her in the eye, I chose every one of you because you have demonstrated records of resisting strong opposition. I asked myself for the same bravery. He got up and walked over to a side table. Coming back with a seal, he put the envelope in front of them. This is my signed resignation, which will take effect immediately if I should under pressure undo these reforms. It has been entrusted to several secure parties and notarized. I've created my erosible commitment. The commissioners looked at one another as the seriousness of the situation descended on Thespis. This was a tangible system that made sure there was no metaphorical theater, that there could be no going back to how things were. As the day wore on, Vatican City assumed the appearance of two concurrently running parallel universes. In order to contain what they perceived as an existential threat, the established power structures first organized. In the alternative, with every hour that went by, the long-suppressed truth began to breathe freely. By midday, social media was inundated with responses to the abuse files that were made public overnight. Supporting hashtags for the Pope's actions became popular. Worldwide. On 5 continents, survivor groups staged spontaneous news conferences. Catholic academic institutions observed unplanned student protests in favor of openness. However, inside the Vatican's corridors of power, the counter-reaction was gathering steam. A well-crafted statement voicing concern among brothers on the way, and cardinals' signatures were added hourly to the draft timing of the Pope's initiatives. As the Pope's first public appearance since his thunderous speech, the afternoon general, the audience, and the tension within Vatican City was at an all-time high. Would Leo XIV adjust his stance in response to mounting opposition? Would he accept that his actions were causing institutional concerns, or would he step up, putting the Church at risk of disintegration? Vatican security packed the audience hall to overflowing. Compelled to shut down an hour early. Thousands more people watched outside on massive screens that were hurriedly set up at St. Peter's Square. Regular programming had been halted by international news networks to provide live coverage. Dometi Cardinal and his supporters placed themselves in a conspicuous location, serving as a visual reminder of the institutional power they embodied. They decide on a plan. They would issue their declaration if the Pope persisted in his unyielding stance. Immediately after the audience, the Church's top officials put up a united front of worry. Pope Leo XIV entered the hall at exactly 3 p.m. A combined intake of the crowd could hear his breath as they observed his clothing. Instead of the official papal attire, but the plain cassock of a priest, whose office is identified only by the papal symbol. Even more startling, he carried a document case on one's own instead of having assistants pay for it. He went straight back to the microphone, ignoring the customary procedures. There was complete stillness in the hall. He started speaking steadily. Yesterday, undividend, I was honest about our shortcomings. I'll be speaking the truth about our future today. He unlocked a document case, taking out a heavy folder. These are 37 bishops' original personnel files who are still serving in their current capacities involved in hiding cases of abuse. I have effectively dismissed them all from the ministry using the authority of my office. Right away. The auditorium was filled with gasps. No pope in contemporary history has ever publicly condemned bishops in attendance at Mass. Additionally, he added, I have approved the resignations of 13 cardinals whose both civil and moral law have been broken by conduct in financial or abusive problems. A murmur ran across the audience, draining the color from Cardinal Demet's face. The Pope wasn't backing down. He was speeding. For those who doubt my ability to take decisive action, I understand that the papacy was created to further Christ's mission of truth, not to maintain institutional comfort. If I consider it an honor to have the proper enemies, even when telling the truth makes me enemies. It was a thunderclap of a statement. Everyone in attendance recognized its significance. Leo XIV was openly opposing those who were planning an attack on him without mentioning them. But it is clear that he was aware of their actions. From now on, the Vatican, the bank, will go through a thorough external audit. All financial commitments associated with exploitative sectors, environmental dictator or totalitarian governments will be sold out right away. Of monetary repercussions, attending economic experts exchanged alarming looks. Such a divestiture would have seismic financial effects. A single priority will guide the restructuring of the diplomatic corps. Speaking the truth to authority instead of preserving excesto authority. Agreements and concordats that keep us silent about violations of human rights will either be renegotiated or forgotten. The diplomatic division remained motionless.